Welcome to the Cybersecurity Summit podcast at Summit Conversation.
So, good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to have our guest, Lee Ann Villella, here with us. Lee Ann is from Proofpoint, and she is a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, very, very well connected. And I'm just excited for you to hear. I've been trying to get a variety of executives in these meetings so you can hear their story, hear what they do, because Lee Ann is in sales. And so this is a different, aspect of the security space. And so I'm going to hand it over to Lee Ann, but really excited to have you learn from Lee Ann. So thanks, Lee Ann.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. So good morning, good afternoon, wherever everybody is. It's good to meet you all virtually. So Michelle said, I'm Lee Ann Villella. I live in Minnetonka, Minnesota, although I'm moving soon to Minneapolis. I've been with my current company, Proofpoint, about 2.5 years. We are a cybersecurity SaaS company. We've been known for email security. We've been doing that 20 years, but we also do insider threat and DLP management, security awareness training. We do email fraud defense. We probably have over 25 products. So a large breadth of products, which I like because when I'm working with customers, there's a lot of different needs that I can fill. So I'll give you just kind of my career history. So I graduated from St. Olaf, which is in Minnesota, English and Women's Studies degree. So liberal arts background. Didn't know what I really wanted to do for career-wise. So it took a few years for me to figure that out. And then I began my career as an account executive working in advertising and then transitioned into sales, primarily in like digital media, digital marketing. And then did another pivot into IT sales, so software sales. And then I discovered some friends that worked in cybersecurity and found it very exciting. Wasn't sure how I was going to navigate my way in, but I was determined that I would do that. And so I ended up joining the Minnesota ISSA board as a program director before I even had a job in cyber. And so that was my foray into meeting people, learning more about cyber. In that role, I had to book speakers, and I ended up being in that role for 4 years. And then, then consequently got a job. In my first cyber job, I was working for a services company called FR Secure. They're based in Minnesota. Boutique security consulting firm. They do things like risk assessments, penetration testing, CISO, vCISO consulting, PCI compliance. And it was great. So I was there almost 3.5 years. Great company. They give back to the community a lot. They actually do a free CISSP certification course that is out on YouTube. Also, all their recordings. They've been doing it for 10 years. Free of charge. So if you look at places that charge for that, they're charging anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000. And I have a bunch of resources I'll email all of you, including those links. But so great company. And then kind of plateaued in my career there. I got a little bored. I was wanting a new challenge, and I also wanted to explore being on the product side of security. And so that's when and this was during COVID, was starting to interview and explore different companies and ended up, landing at Proofpoint. And I will say, I'm in sales, and my goal being in sales is to always bring value and serve the customer. I mean, I never want to sell something that doesn't make sense for people. That's just not how I like to work. And I think the nice thing about cyber is you're helping companies protect themselves and their employees and their customers. And so I think just being in cyber in general, it's a great industry because I just think people are committed to doing good things, and it's not always the easiest business, especially for people like in CISO roles. It can be very stressful, but it's there's just great people, great community. So the other piece I would share too. So I shared I was on the ISSA board for 4 years, but volunteering and being on the think tank with Eileen and her team for the last couple of years, like doing anything you can do to volunteer and get out and meet people. The WESIS is another group chapter in Minnesota that I've been involved with, which is the Women in Cyber. There's also national and international chapters there. There's a ton of just great events to always be going to. The Cloud Security Alliance, ISACA, in addition to ISSA. So wherever you are, I think there's always groups and also virtual groups as well. And so I follow a lot of people, thought leaders in cyber on LinkedIn, and I think many of them actually post great advice about people who are young in their career, trying to break in. So a lot of them post about jobs or internships. So I think there's just a ton of also finding the right communities and folks on LinkedIn to be following. And I have a list that I follow that I'll share with all of you. The other thing I would say, depending on, where you are in your career path, either working for a company or working for, a provider like my company, we're about 5,000 employees, global company. There's tons of places to be in companies like this that I think could be interesting, whether it's a security engineer who's helping sell technology or product development, or we have 120 threat analysts in our threat intelligence team that do super interesting work, and they work all over the world. And so there's just a lot of interesting places in my company, but a lot of cyber companies too. There's just a lot of leading edge technology that's really exciting. So I guess that's my intro. Michelle, do you open it up to questions, or how would you like to proceed?
Yeah, one more question for you, Lee Ann. From a security standpoint, what keeps you up at night?
Customers who are dealing with challenges. So for example, I had a current customer that they're dealing with a challenge with their email gateway right now, and deliverability. And that's part of what we deliver, but they're having some challenges that we're trying to help them with. And I'm working with some global teams. So I've got people in Asia who are on very different time zones, and it can be challenging at times, just trying to deal support, things like that. And I would say, what keeps me up at night is just making sure you're doing the best job for your customers, because CISOs and leaders are under a lot of pressure, especially right now. Budgets are tighter. There's more scrutiny. Budgets are getting delayed around spend for products and things like that. Customers have breaches, and they are having to deal with that, all the time. So you have to be mindful and respectful, because these are very busy people who are always under stress. It seems like, frequently it can be. So, it's a fine line between being supportive and then being also respectful of people's time, and not like nagging that we're being too pushy, I guess is maybe the word. So, but yeah, that's typically what keeps me up at night is client challenges. And again, how can I best support my the companies that I work with?
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah, let's open it up to the interns to ask you questions. So, interns, the floor is yours. Go ahead, Abby.
Lee Ann, I was wondering, I'm actually in the middle of the interview process with Cargill right now for a SOC analyst, and they have first shift, which is worked in the United States, and then their second and third shifts are worked overseas. And I was wondering, because you said you worked with people in Asia, how difficult communication can be when you're in different time zones, when you're so far away that you can't like brief each other in person and, you know, really show what you're doing.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because I was thinking about this last night when I was getting emails from these folks in the Philippines. Because of this customer, we typically do 7 a.m. calls, and they're on about 8:30 at night their time. And these are some folks that have little kids, and so I'm sure it's a challenge, but that's part of what they have to deal with, and we're trying to accommodate. And 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. is kind of our limit in my world in terms of what you can ask people to be on in our current time zones. So we try to accommodate as best we can. And this is a company that's mostly virtual. And the manager of these folks is in an Eastern time zone in the US. So, I think companies like Cargill that are global, they have to figure that out. But I think, you probably, as you're interviewing, want to think about what works for your schedule and your, sort of energy zones and all that kind of stuff. Because some people. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, they work, like a regular Monday through Friday, occasionally swapping like once a month weekends is what I understand. And so yeah, I was just a little bit concerned about how we would be communicating if it's mostly over email, and of course they're gonna know the answer better than you will, but I was curious how you solved those challenges. So thank you.
Yeah, the other thing is it seems like, and it's not across the board, but a lot of security people, like on my customer side, like I know one guy works like 6 a.m. to 2:30, and then, a lot of early birds, I will say. Mm-hmm. It's that just like to start their day early. And sometimes, they have to watch things after they're sort of put in their time, but so.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I have a question. Thank you very much for having us today. I was going to ask you, now that you are in the perhaps sales perspective for cybersecurity, I think it's the shift from perhaps working as a SOC analyst or someone that works with very technical skills on a day-to-day basis, rather than just using those skills and that knowledge of cybersecurity and selling it to different perhaps services like Proofpoint, for example. I work as an InfoSec analyst intern at UPS too, and I know the heavy reliance on Proofpoint and how it's a critical vendor for us. I was wondering, what are those top skills you have as both a cyber expert and a salesperson?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have to know enough to be dangerous. I work very closely with a security engineer. So on the sales side, you're kind of a team. You're a team. So I need to know enough to, be able to speak articulately around our products, but then bring in my subject matter experts when we're going in the weeds. But at the same time, CISOs are always trying to stay up to speed on the latest around threat intelligence and the industry and areas that they're interested in their specific vertical industries. So you also want to be a trusted advisor. And so I try to send them things, podcasts or articles that I think they would find useful. And I have to, stay smart just day to day to be able to do that and offer that to customers. So I am constantly learning, whether it's, I listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of my own company industry stuff. We have constant training all the time because things are always changing, but it's really, just trying to establish yourself as a trusted advisor so that you can be resourceful and valuable again to those folks that you're serving.
Okay, thank you.
So I just had a quick question. So
yeah,
coming from, you said the digital sales market, what interests you in cybersecurity to make that jump?
So in my career, I've always realized that I always wanted to be on the leading edge of whatever I'm selling. And for me, cybersecurity, it was exciting. It was something like you never get bored because there's always something new to learn. And that's my personality. I gravitate towards that. So, and also my company, there's a lot of cyber companies where they maybe just sell one product. And I get the luxury of being able to sell at least 25 plus solutions. And so that also keeps me engaged mentally because otherwise I tend to get bored if I'm not in a challenge. Yeah, and it was, it was just interesting to me. It was compelling to me. Again, and also delivering a lot of value to people I'm selling to has always been important to me. I don't like selling things that I don't think are really delivering value. It's just, yeah, so.
Lee Ann, I have another question if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering about what your most sold product is at Proofpoint. What's most in demand there?
So historically, email security, our gateway, because we've been doing that for 20 years, but our next highest product is our insider threat and DLP suite. So it's called Sigma Platform, and it's everything from CASB, endpoint DLP, insider threat management, browser isolation, web security. So it's kind of a platform that encompasses all of those. That's probably our fastest growing. Symantec has historically been the number one DLP product. We think we will be in that space by the end of the year, just based on what we're seeing or tracking. And then
I
the
was
other
seeing Proofpoint a lot when I've been kind of, browsing LinkedIn on people's pages. So definitely was noticing Proofpoint's got a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And so we also put 20% of our revenue goes back into R&D. So as a company, we've either gone and acquired companies if there was a space where we felt like there's a gap, or we've gone and developed products. And so again, I like that perspective as working for a company like that. We acquired a company last year called Elusive that's in the identity threat defense space, and that's also kind of a hot space. We've had some good traction there. Did I answer your question? Again, I got
Yes, thank you. I was
sidetracked.
just wondering what companies are
Yeah.
looking for most right now, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's always trends and phases of what might be hot. I think the EDR space has been very hot also with companies like CrowdStrike and SentinelOne, and others like that in the last few years. I would say very big, sort of buzz around AI and ML. Companies have been using. I mean, we've been doing that for several years, but like that's just a hot area.
Yeah, that's come into the public eye recently. Yeah.
Yeah, which reminds me, this is something I'll share with you all in my follow-up email, but Proofpoint's been doing certifications around certain products, and they're free to anybody. And we have one that's starting this week on AI and ML if you want to get a certification. So it's basically 3 one-hour webinars. You can do them when they're scheduled or on demand, and then you take a test and you get a certification. And it's great to put on LinkedIn, and you can talk about it when you're interviewing, or just gives you a little bit more credibility that you're going and doing stuff like that. So I'll share that with you guys.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I
will. Oh, I was going to say I will just chime in and say that I have been taking the Proofpoint cybersecurity leadership courses, and yeah, they've been pretty informative and quite valuable. So looking forward to the AI/ML course as well. I'm already signed up for that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm in it too. We just did one on security awareness. We did one on insider threat DLP. So I think a couple times a year we do them. So.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, for what do you think when you're perhaps selling the services for Proofpoint? I know that this is a company which is growing. What do you think about cloud security? I believe also there's some perhaps improvements on cloud security and different services. If you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so cloud security, again, definitely kind of tends to be a area of interest for a lot of companies. a lot of digital transformation and moving to the cloud migration is a topic for a lot of companies. I would say the only ones that are still dealing on-prem, a lot of the big healthcares still have them. Some of my financial services companies still on-prem and aren't going to do full cloud. Some manufacturing I've actually worked with too that are not going to be full cloud. But I would say for a lot of companies, that's definitely an important element. And it is, one of the areas products that we offer. That's an area where I have a specialist that I lean on. But anyway, definitely an area of interest.
Lee Ann, what advice would you give new security professionals?
I would say a couple things. So practice your what's called quote unquote soft skills. So communication, just how to interview well, public speaking. There are Toastmasters groups. If public speaking is a challenge or you want to brush up on that. I've done that in the past. There was a tech specific Toastmasters here in Minnesota that I would go to. So it was mostly like software developers and really great experience. I would also say, there's so many free resources of how you can train yourself or just get smart about things, listening to podcasts, those sorts of things. And the other thing I would say is, if you're just out of school and you don't have that experience yet, we've been on calls with other think tank members. Almost every security leader will say, I don't care if you don't have the skills. If you have the passion and you're a good worker and you can communicate, I'll hire you and I'll train you. And I think that's pretty broad across the board, but you will hear that from security leaders because, it's still a young industry in some ways. And so if you can demonstrate that passion when you're interviewing, I think that will really bode well for you. So I would just, you're having to learn how to sell yourself, but how can you sell yourself? How can you demonstrate that you're going to be a valuable employee and you're going to, be a learner and somebody who's a team player and can communicate well? I think those are going to be, your strongest selling points.
Thank you.
Okay, Lee Ann.
What's that?
Quick,
Go ahead.
Quick question for you. So, what would you say is your favorite part about your job right now?
Closing deals.
Closing deals?
But
Fair
it's
enough.
hard. I'm in the midst of it's fun. And I think, I would say also when you're doing like a POC for a technology and it goes really well and you see that the customer's seeing value in it, like that's exciting to me. And I would just having positive feedback from customers. I've had this global customer that I work with where we onboarded a product and it took them 6 months, which was unusually long. But they said we were the best onboarding experience they ever had, head and tails above other companies. And so it was nice to just hear that positive feedback. Again, it kind of goes back to when you're delivering value to somebody and they see that and they communicate that. Like that to me is what's satisfying. But and I get rewarded for that. So that's the fun part. But like being able to do that is gratifying.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I was going to just reiterate too was just the volunteering at different groups or going, if groups are doing in-person events, to just go and network because, if you're brave enough to do that and you introduce yourself and, let somebody know there, because you're going to have a lot of seasoned security folks that you're, in your career, you're job hunting. A lot of people are willing to help people. So I just think, it's a great way to get networked.
Quick question. What organizations or events would you suggest for us to volunteer for besides Cybersecurity Summit, where we're interns?
Yeah, I would say WESIS, Women in Cyber.
Okay.
That's a great one. ISSA is great. There's chapters all over the world. I've gone to the Cloud Security Alliance. It's been a little bit, but that's another good group. Again, I'm speaking for Minnesota that I've been exposed to, but I'm trying to think if there's other ones. Michelle or Eileen, are there other groups that I'm missing? ISACA.
ISC squared.
IC
Yeah, I
squared.
was gonna say ISACA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there's the ability to sometimes volunteer at conferences too. Secure 360, I think they were doing that at one point. I don't know if they still were, but I that was another conference I volunteered early on in my career before I was in cyber to just get exposure. So.
And let me just put in a plug there, you know, as part of your internships, all of you get a scholarship to attend all 3 days of the summit, and we actually were planning on you being there because we've kind of got assigned roles for each of you so that you will be in a position to meet a lot of people at the summit. But those are really important things to take advantage of, because being in person and networking is really important. And also, I also need to know who's going to be there in person for sure, because we have to put our panel together. So and get you your roles assigned. So maybe Michelle, you can reach out to everybody and find out who, you just confirm who's going to actually be there. You know, make sure everybody's going to be there in person.
Yep, I was gonna be doing so.
So some of you are in cyber jobs and some of you are like still in school. What's kind of your mix, or are you all graduates and you're sort of in the early stages of the career in cyber?
We have a
I think
few
it's
that are yeah, we have a
sorry,
few
go
that have
ahead.
just graduated, and I'm sorry, we have a few that are on the road to graduation, but most of them I think have pretty much graduated and are just starting their, you know, they're in their first cyber job or looking for their first cyber job. And one of the things that this program is all about is taking people that are just about to graduate or have just graduated and giving them, by volunteering for this and being part of this program, it exposes them to all the many, many different areas in cyber that they can, and the paths that they can go down. So Lee Ann, if you're new in the, you know, just graduated and stuff like that, and you want to get into a sales job, how would you best navigate? Because I had somebody just recently reach out to me and asked me to mentor them, and they were joining a competitor of yours who hired them, and they really had no experience. And like you said, a lot of people are willing to take them on and just they like their spirit and everything else. But if you were new, starting your career, and you didn't have a lot of the technical experience, how would you go about navigating within a company to build a successful sales career? How would you seek out mentors? What type of mentors would you seek out? How would you go about getting training? You know, can you give us that insight?
So it's a good question. I would go find the top sales reps and talk to them and see if they'd be willing to be a mentor. I would engage if there's formal mentorships, and then I would also do your own informal like reach outs, and I would find your top sales reps, your top managers, like anybody who's willing, you know, to be a mentor or just have an occasional coffee or whatever. And then I would also maybe look to the technical side if you're selling a product, to find a mentor from that side also, just to ensure that you're up to speed on that. And then I would also look outside your company for outside mentors, or, you know, there's some people have used the term like finding your own board of directors in your career, and it's finding those trusted advisors, you know, whether it's another salesperson or trusted leaders or cyber folks, you know, find those people that you who have some, you know, seasonality to their career that can give you kind of wisdom and insight and get you connected to other folks, especially if you're interviewing or you just want, you know, other mentors or perspectives. And then I would say, there are a ton of amazing sales podcasts, both within cyber as well as just sales that I listen to religiously. And like, you are never done in sales in terms of being educated and being smart. I also think that's true just working in cybersecurity, but like you always have to be committed to your personal growth and learning, because I think if you're not, you're gonna be stale. So, but I would say, start to think about who do you want on your personal board of directors for your career, and who do you want as your mentors, and start to build that out.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, sorry, a
Yeah.
call came in on my phone and it kind of screwed up my I can't see the screen now. But one of the things I wanted to amplify what Lee Ann just said, whether you go into the sales or just in starting your career. I know when I started my business 27 years ago, the first thing I did was put together a list. I said, okay, I'm starting a career, I'm starting a business. I need somebody I can go to school on that's really good in accounting, that's really good in legal, that's really good in all the different things, areas of expertise that I wasn't strong in. So I actually made up my own little list of my board of directors, kind of my informal board of directors, just like Lee Ann just mentioned. And I connected with him and said, hey, would you be willing to just be an advisor for me in the occasions when I needed it? And so for the first 10 years when I ran the business, I maybe called on him once or twice during that time frame, but I always knew that they were there in the background available for me if I had something come up. And that really was liberating and helped me a lot in excelling. So you can do that. Run your career like it's your own business, because it's your brand. And whether you're in sales or whether you're in tech, you need to look at your career. This is your business, and run it like that. And you have to market it, and you have to get out in front of people. So just some really, I just wanted to amplify what, like I said, what Lee Ann said.
I think that's great advice, Eileen and Lee Ann, because I think it's easy. You get really busy in your job, and all the demands and meeting, time frames and deliverables and all these things. And I have found for me, it has been hard for me to carve out time for myself, for not developing those relationships, but keeping those relationships current. And, not just reaching out to someone, after 10 years. I mean, certainly you can do so, but, trying to maybe a couple times a year, like Lee Ann said, having coffee with someone or having lunch, or just checking in and, being there for one another with that trusted group of people, your own board of directors. It's really, really important. And that's something I've been trying to do for myself. And I think you heard another speaker talk about this as well. It gets tough to do, but just because there's so many demands on your time, but you really need to do that. And the sooner you start doing that, that just becomes part of your norm. It's almost like exercising or something like that. It's a lifestyle of your career. And it is really important.
And just one other thing, Michelle, prior to me starting my career as an entrepreneur, I worked for a Fortune 100 corporation and I was in senior management, and we had whole teams that the decision was made, the business was going to go in a different direction. And so I had to let go people that were rock stars Their performance was spot on. We couldn't have asked more from them. They were amazing people. But you have to understand that major corporations, any company, need to make business decisions based on how they're going to position themselves in the future. And just because you are a top performer at a really rock solid company, it doesn't mean that you will have this long-term career with them, because they may have just acquired another business and now they have duplication of people, and or they may have decided that they need to go in a different direction. And so all these people that have just done, have been there for years and have just been high performers, they're let go. So you need to always be out there and making time. And it's really hard when you're really busy in the middle of all sorts of stuff. But, like, you just have to set up a thing on your personal schedule that once a quarter, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be meeting with somebody outside outside of my company, because it also then leads to other opportunities and possible job offers from other companies by staying that connected.
Yeah, all my jobs in cyber was through networking, and my last 4 jobs have all been through networking. Like that's going to be your best way to get the best jobs, I think. And the other thing I will share too, sort of what Eileen was sharing was, and Michelle, is just, you have to be mindful to stay connected with networking, because you never know. Even people in cyber have been downsized lately. When you think, it's a very high demand industry right now, but even folks at cyber companies have been downsized. So I think just always being mindful to stay connected, even when you're busy in your job, because you never know when you're going to need or want a new opportunity. So to always keep your network, sort of fresh and in connection is smart.
I wanna ask. I am obviously have like experience at both Lee Ann and Eileen and anybody probably here. I wanted to ask. Now that I am almost finishing my career, or my undergraduate degree in computer science with specializations in cyber, I was, part of the reason why I want to network so much is not just pure job seeking, but rather mentorship and understanding how to set up my business, but also my career in cybersecurity, because there's so many domains, so many things we can do. I would like to understand, based on my skills and my desires, well, what's the track I would like to follow. I was going to ask, how would you consider when someone is reaching out to you, or are you getting a LinkedIn message from perhaps someone with less experience trying to get a little bit of mentorship and understanding on your position? What would be a nice way to receive that message, or how to create that message in terms of, hey, I'm such and such, I am in this position right now, I would like to know more about you and what you do. How would you like to be?
That's a really good question. Yeah. I would suggest do your homework about the person. I mean, there's so many things that you can find out about a person through Google or LinkedIn or whatever. And so I would do your homework before you craft a message to find out what their areas of expertise, if there's something that grabbed you, and do a very tailored message. Like, I see, you're working in X or such and such. I'm interested in that. I'm new graduate, very passionate about it. I would do a very customized, tailored message, because I think that's, especially if you're reaching out cold, that's going to be your most effective way. When I get LinkedIn messages where it's just a connection, I don't know the person, or these days you get so many LinkedIn messages where, like, it's just, they just pushed a button. They don't know anything about you. So I would spend the time to craft something that's related, more personalized to someone. And you also want to, think about it, what's in it for them, especially if it's a cold reach out. Like, how could you be valuable to them? Maybe they're hiring, maybe they need an intern. Like, you don't know, but, like, again, sell yourself how you could be that it could be a win-win for both, I think would be your most effective way to approach that.
I see. Thank you.
Or get a, or get a warm introduction if there's a mutual connection or something. I mean, that's going to be your first choice, but if not, yeah, that would be my approach recommendation.
Also, using the attending conferences like the summit to really be on site, network, listen to all their speakers. We're going to have 150 speakers at the conference, and if there's one that really touches you, then reaching out to them and saying, "Hey, I heard you at the cybersecurity summit, or I met you briefly at the cybersecurity summit. Your messaging was really powerful. I don't know if you take on interns or if you mentor anybody, but I'd love to be able to have a talk with you. I know your schedule's really busy, but so they know that there was that connection. But the summits and conferences are really great opportunities to network and engage with people, because if you can meet them firsthand and say, "I'd like to follow up with you," that is really helpful in getting versus just a plain cold call.
Yeah. And I would practice your so-called elevator speech about yourself too, before you're going to conferences like that. So you're sharp and, you can be succinct and describe yourself. Because it's first impressions is always important.
Mm-hmm. I see. Thank you very much.
All sorts of good advice, Lee Ann.
Yeah, it's been good discussion from everybody.
We're coming up to the end of our time period with Lee Ann. Are there any other questions that you may have?
I have one for the group, just because I'm curious. Do you guys use LinkedIn? Is that considered passé? What's your perspective on that?
I think it's a must if we're in the summit.
Yep, we all use LinkedIn.
I actually have come to love LinkedIn. I'm not going to lie, when I first started the internship, I kind of was very scared of LinkedIn and kind of like hated it a little bit.
Yeah.
But now it's been just an invaluable resource as the time has gone on and I've connected with more people. Again, I'm in the middle of a process for Cargill's interviewing. And so Hugo, I cold reached out to a SOC analyst on Cargill's team, and he responded and was so excited that I had done that. That's and awesome. Was just super detailed in his description of the position. So, LinkedIn is great.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you guys a bunch of people, security people I follow, but there are so many things on LinkedIn, just people within the industry, especially I follow a lot of CISOs. You can follow companies. There's some other, so I'll send you guys a whole list that I follow, but I just feel like there's a lot of resources out there. Hugo, you could be following people within your area that you are trying to get into, see what they're posting about. When you look at their posts, then you get a flavor, for their mindset, and you can reach out that way. So, that's part of my job is I use LinkedIn a lot just to find people, get perspectives, but also to stay fresh, within the industry and hear what other people are talking about. So.
And guys, remember, you're going to be using LinkedIn for the next 20, 30 years. Wow. But
there'll probably be something else, but a while.
Yeah, exactly. But the point I was going to make is, so you go to the summit, every single person you meet at the summit, you want to reconnect with them and say, "Hey, it was great meeting you at the cybersecurity summit, this year in Minneapolis. And, I'd like to, connect with you for whatever reason. I'm new in my career, etc." Give a reason to connect. But the reason you want to position where and when you met them is because 8 years from now, you may need to talk to somebody with their qualifications and background. And then if you're already connected, it's much easier to get a response from them, because I always look, okay, when did I connect with this person? Do I know this person? People reach out to me all the time and say, "Hey, I see you're connected with so-and-so. How do you know them?" Well, if I can go back to that initial connection request and it tells me, "Oh yeah, I met them at this summit," that will help you years down the road, because we're trying to build a platform for you now to help you in your career for many years in the future.
Yep, well said.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I want to thank Lee Ann for her time, her generous time today, giving you guys a lot of great insight, myself included. And as we've said, after each of these meetings, if you are not connected to Lee Ann already, please send her a LinkedIn invitation. She is a think tank member of the Cybersecurity Summit. And if you're able to be in Minneapolis on site at the summit, please track Lee Ann down, because she will be there for at least part of the time frame on site. So
Yeah, that'd be fun.
yeah, thank you so much, Lee Ann.
Yeah,
Really
you're welcome.
appreciate your
It was fun to
time.
connect. And I'll shoot you guys an email with some resources. So definitely reach out with any other questions.
All right.
Thanks,
Hope
Lee Ann.
everyone
Thank you,
has
Lee
a
Ann.
great rest of
Thank
their day,
you. Yeah.
evening.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Leanne. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us today at the Cybersecurity Summit podcast. See you next week. We invite you to join our Cyber Pro community on LinkedIn at Cybersecurity Summit.